Oh,
And
okay.
Ron, obviously I can't give you paper, but if you check your email, you got those things on there. And unfortunately I sent it late and then I forgot to make the attachment, so the actual attachment went later, but so
Yeah.
here's
Appreciate you doing it all.
first thing. It's
in,
kind of hot off
The
the
Green Book and
press.
document.
So you may have seen and posting on the town Facebook page that got shared to different sites. That we did some individual outreach on specific subjects related to wastewater. We didn't want to overdo the information and send out some big things, so we broke it down into, I think we're up to 6 posts, 6 pieces out at this point. But this is a compilation of those 6 posts. So, and actually a little bit more.
So some of this is what was sent out earlier.
Yes.
And some additional.
So we're just kind of compiling it into one book.
Okay,
And
okay, terrific.
and so this is kind of the latest, because we, obviously it's going to come up at town meeting on Monday. Maybe not specific discussion because there's no specific article, but there are some related articles and people just want to know about it. So we wanted to have something to give them. And then the second thing I have, which you already have, I sent to you a week or 2 ago. But I have handouts here. It's just those detailed calculations of how I got to some of the comparisons.
Wastewater comparisons.
Yeah. So, I guess the long and the short of it is, just to summarize where we are and why we had to ask the finance committee if you'd like to meet, is the select board did vote to have a June 23rd special town meeting for this single issue of whether or not we want to proceed with wastewater. And the background is that we originally were not on what's called the intended use plan, the IUP from the state, which without that, not that it's not feasible, but it's very much expensive. So we decided not to pursue this at our May town meeting. And we were a little uncomfortable that perhaps we were ready. But we did some lobbying and had an informal appeal. And lo and behold, the final product came out of the IUP. We were on it, fully funded, with a guarantee for that funding through the completion of our project. And, anything could change between now and 4 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. But in our mind, we kind of think this is our last best chance to get the most attractive package that we can. There's also pressures on the Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust, which currently offers us a 25% subsidy of our debt service. And they've given us a notice that they're intending to fund our project at that 25% subsidy. So we're moving forward, and as soon as we decided that, we briefed the select board, told them how we felt about it, and that's why they set the town meeting. And then we started issuing these individual pieces of information to start alerting the community. We've gotten some feedback. I would say mostly positive. Of course, there's some people that aren't happy. The usual, are my taxes going up? Which, we'll talk about. And then most understandably from the neighborhood that, maybe was a little caught off guard and has concerns about, the siting of the plant and, effects on the neighborhood. So we gotta work on that. I think our latest post, which is in here, regarding some adjustments that we made to the site, the big ones being especially the process building, which is where the SBRs are located, and the tanks on the exterior were adjacent to Old Orchard Road on the east side of the property, with those tanks kind of not pushed back, facing the road. And that mechanicals, those are the things that occasionally produce odors, and most importantly, everybody thinks about odor, but it's really noise is the biggest thing, because it has a lot of blowers and fans and things. So one of the modifications was taking it from those buildings from the east side of the property, putting them on the west side of the property. It gets us close to 500 feet of a buffer. So that's, yeah.
500 feet from Orchard Road.
What's on closer to the properties to the west?
On the west, it's abutting the bike trail, and then the uninhabited, unbuilt big parcel at the end of Holmes Road, that DeRuyter owns.
So that's a good location. It's the farthest away from the neighborhood
People.
and the northern neighborhood.
Right, that's a pretty big change.
Yeah, yeah.
Capital Projects Committee, so. That's why. Rich, those, the SRF funding and stuff is, if you outline this is just for phase one, right? There's no commitment under phase two.
So, right, so this, targeted watershed management plan.
Yeah.
Calls for 2 phases. But I expect that the second phase, at best is 15 years out and probably more likely 20 years out. So, what we're talking about is around 170 million for phase one, which is basically from Town Hall here down into Northeast Tam, Tea Time and along Route 6, Schoolhouse Road, Nauset Road, and some of those adjoining streets in Old Orchard Road. So that's about 768 or 800 or so properties, plus or minus, in phase one, and a similar amount, a little bit larger amount in phase two. So probably the 700 numbers on phase one and the 800 numbers on phase two. So 1,600 all told over, next couple of decades. But that one's so far out and so much could change in that time frame that the focus is just on the phase one. So obviously that collection system, and obviously need a treatment plant to process them.
Now, you mentioned that you've increased the figure from 160, you added 10 more
Yeah,
million.
we had been carrying 160 in the capital
To
plan,
170.
and
Given the situation that we're in these days, how do you feel that should be even more than the 10? I don't know.
it's hard. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody knows the impact of potential tariffs, but in those are obviously going to be impactful, but if they're there. But I think the most impactful thing is probably the bid climate when you go to do it. We are still relatively at the front of the line of getting work done, as opposed to, the middle or the end when there's everybody trying to do all this work, and contractors bid a premium to do, because they don't need the extra work, right? So if to the extent they take it on, they're gonna get paid extra. So the bid environment, to me, just in being around for the last 30 years in these types of projects, is always the most impactful thing. If people are looking for the work and want the work, they're gonna give you a good price. If they don't need it, they'll give you a price, but it's gonna be jacked up.
So high that
It's worth it,
something-
extra worth it to them.
It's to the folks who are outside of phase one.
So that's kind of so this is actually a great question to me, and I think a great question for the finance committee. Kind of the philosophical approach to how we're paying for this. Because at the moment, our approach, my approach, is that everyone's gonna pay through the tax rate to the extent that there's an impact to the tax rate equally. So, at first that might seem unfair, but the trade-off is, if we do nothing, the vast majority of town will have to implement very expensive IA systems. By 700 people having to commit to doing this and hooking up, that prevents the rest of the town from having to put in IAs. They can keep their Title V system.
That's my question. So the people outside of phase one won't be
Forced.
mandated
Right.
to do something because there is a phase two coming.
And even if their system fails and needs to be replaced, they can replace it with the Title V, not an IA.
Okay, great.
So that's-
How many people does that involve? How many people are we talking about that would not be in phase one?
Well, if you just use nice round numbers of this 50, I think I try to get as precise as I can while being conservative. And I think the number that I came up with is 5,730 potential IA installations.
Right.
So just call it 5,700. And if there's roughly 700 that have to connect in phase one, that means 5,000 people have foregone the need to implement an IA.
And I think this,
Right, so my initial conservative calculation and talking to the assessor and the number of properties that
Right.
might have to install an IA, that townwide, there are about 5,730 was the precise number that I used. So for talking purposes, 5,700. We'd have to install IAs, and then, but Mary's question was, how many people outside of phase one does that affect? So if phase one is 700 people having connect to a sewer system, and there's 5,700 potential properties, that means 5,000 people don't have to connect to the sewer, but also don't have to upgrade to an IA. But they would pay the
Absolutely.
extra taxes. Because they benefited, because we, you know,
That makes total
and
sense.
that's the philosophical approach I took to the financing. So, you know, I just want to make sure the finance committee, you know, understood that. And if you want to discuss it at some point, then we ought to, but
Well, I think it's like the water project, you know, people were in different phases, you can't get everything done all at once. And people just have to trust that it will happen eventually.
And I think what we're trying to push on the policymakers, the select board, be upfront with you guys, try and be upfront with town meeting, that if we choose the community solution, then we're in the community solution. And that means that 20 years from now, some Northeast Ham neighborhood is mandated to hook up by the DEP for something. We're gonna figure out a way to help pay for that too, and do it as a contract as opposed to
Mhm.
letting people just do it on
Do
their
their-
own.
do their own.
So, you know, because we don't know what's coming down the pike. We know what we've got planned for the next 20 years.
And the way I would view it is, I'm outside of it. I'm right off Route 6, across from the animal hospital, but for me, I'm protected by people within the zone. I'll be protected, and even if I'm not here in 20 years, God helping, whoever is occupying the property will be protected.
And there will be people that will come in and buy houses outside of the sewering area, I'm sure, that will want to add bedrooms or want to add something, and they may be required to upgrade to an IA in order to do
Mhm.
extra things. But that's kind of a separate category.
And this, you know, those on the waterfront
Mhm.
or in water, in wetland areas
Mhm.
might have requirements still to
Especially,
do
yeah.
IA systems. So it doesn't totally eliminate the requirement, but the requirement is because it's mandated under the regulations that this is falling under, it's mandated because of, you would have to have done it anyway.
Right. Right.
So I have a question for Jackie. You just mentioned that if somebody wanted to add on, they might and bought a house and add it on. They might be forced to put in an IA system. Who would make that decision?
Same people that do now, the Board of Health.
The Board of Health, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, and I have another question on the monies that we're hoping to get on the from the Cape and Islands group there. While back I read that there was not enough money in that fund to pay for all of the costs and the towns that needed the monies. And you're talking about using or getting, I think, 25%. What are that's not given. I
Well, they
mean,
notified us that they were honoring the 25% for this project.
that they have told us that they have enough money for us for the
Yep.
25%.
Last year, I'm on that board. I'm on the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund board, and last year we were running into, because there were so many projects. So we reallocated the money. So instead of paying 25% in cash to the town, we're paying 25% of the debt service, which is the same thing. It's just the cash gets to stay in the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund and be dispersed each year.
Mhm.
So that one change was really significant and stretched out the money.
I would say
So,
it is the same thing as long as you're getting 0% financing. It's
Right.
not the same thing if you got to pay interest.
Right.
So that's the other part of this is we're still optimistic that this year, at least some of our project will be at the 0% rate.
and the other thing I just learned, and I haven't looked at it yet, but the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund wrote a letter to support the environmental bond bill, which is before the legislature this year. So that also has some additional money for SRF for water programs, water and wastewater.
You know, there's a lobbying effort underway to have, I think it's 500 million of the upcoming environmental bond bill go to stabilize the SRF,
Mhm.
which would be great news for us when we go to phase, round 2 and round 3. So hopefully we get attractive financing for round 1, we think we will, and hopefully that'll hold through. And so again, that's why we kind of think this is our last best chance. Can't guarantee it's our last best chance, but even if we got some, something, similar to what we could get now 5 years from now, well, it's still not the same because you got 5 years of inflation, so. Every community I've seen that's weighted has seen increases of 5% plus per year
Mhm.
on their projects.
So I was looking through some historical things today to check on something, and I found that in 2009, Stearns and Wheeler, our very first study, predicted that we would need a wastewater treatment plant and collection system and costed it out at 59 million. So that's $7.6 million a year in escalation costs to where we are now.
But we had the same situation with the water.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, we should have done.
And that's what I'm
it's very
saying,
easy to
Mary.
Say we should have done it a long time ago
Like-
when it was cheaper.
You understand for us, it's like it's like putting your hand on a hot stove and getting burned twice. Like,
Yeah.
why would we make that same bad decision again? But I understand that people aren't, they're not thinking that way, and that's understandable too.
Mhm.
But the bottom line, and the reason why we went to the select board to have that meeting, asked for a special is, it's. I can't think of the word, but it's irresponsible if we didn't at least put it out there and give people a chance to talk about it and take a vote on it.
Yeah, it's a
So we
community
were,
decision.
so we're gonna
It's-
decide not to do it and cost millions of dollars in the future.
Oh, my
No.
God.
How does the, Cape and Islands Water Protection funded?
It's short-term rental.
They're funded through the short-term rental tax, so.
2.75%.
Yep.
Yeah.
So at any time someone comes and stays and pays for a rental in Eastham, 2.75% of that goes into the fund.
Or any town for that matter.
Right, but
And the
we've
island.
contributed a lot because we
Sure.
do have a fair amount of.
Mhm. So I have another question, and it sort of piggybacks on Kate's. Since we know that there are going to be houses that aren't going to be in phase 1. And we're doing this in order to make sure that our water is protected. How long do we have before the people that are not in one of the phases have to meet? Who decides the timing that those houses have to meet something other than what they currently have? I'm not sure I'm asking the
Well,
right.
our phase 1
DEP.
is designed, so we've been doing studies and monitoring for years now, and we settle when we file our targeted watershed management plan with DEP, and they've accepted our plan that identifies what's called a total maximum daily load, a TMDL. That represents the amount of nitrogen you need to remove from the water. And so for the estuaries we're talking about in phase 1, it's upwards of, it's minimum of 75% nearing 100% for salt pond watershed of nitrogen in that water that we need to remove. So phase 1 meets the requirement to remove what we need to remove. So there is no further requirement for the properties outside of that district.
Then we start working on our percentage of Nauset Marsh
Mhm.
Town Cove,
Town Cove.
that's phase 2.
So there may be houses that are Title V. Unless something changes with that house forever.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, they passed Title V, in 1978? They updated it with standards in 1995. So, the DEP generally moves slowly, right? So, that's why it was kind of shocking when they came out with this whole new regulation a year ago. I mean, it was about time, but it was
Mhm.
still.
Oh, yeah.
so let's just focus, so to your question, and I think it's just good to have the conversation. So the regulation is in towns that have nitrogen sensitive areas. It doesn't have to be the whole town, it could just be parts of a town.
Right.
But in a nitrogen sensitive area, you have a mandate to remove that nitrogen. Your TMDL requirement. And if you don't have any plan, then the mandate, that law requires that within 5 years, people within that nitrogen sensitive area have to install an IA. Our town has had a reprieve on that because we said, hey, we're gonna file a targeted watershed management plan to alleviate nitrogen. So as long as we were making progress on that, the DEP kind of held in abeyance that 5-year timeline. And now we've got a TMDL that's finished and approved by DEP. And it's time to continue the progress or not. And so, and one of the things I'm trying to button down for prior to June 23rd is what's the or not mean? I think it probably means that 5-year clock is ticking now. That might take a year for them to decide that it needs to click. So now we got 6 years. So, I don't know what it is, but my best guess would be somewhere between 5 and 10 years. If we stop making progress on nitrogen removal as a community,
We'll be
then
affected.
the individual property owners will have to make progress. And the problem with that is we know it's not enough nitrogen removal. IA systems will not remove the amount they will move at maximum under the best circumstances up to 50%. And if you ask,
To sort of your point, what the rest of the community, these 5,000 people that aren't gonna get connected, what's in it for them, and part of it is a cleaner estuary.
Yes.
That IA just wouldn't be able to produce.
well, that's so if we didn't do anything, and Hilly would probably argue with me that 50% is probably even optimistic, but just given the most conservative number, if the IAs remove 50% of nitrogen, but a requirement is somewhere between 75 and 100%, we haven't met the TMDL removal requirement, which means we'd probably be mandated then to also still do a community system.
And the treatment plant will remove nitrogen, phosphorus, and if we have
Anything else.
chemicals that we need to get rid of. The ponds, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't remove all the phosphorus, but I think there's a percentage.
So what would be, as we're sitting at town meeting and people are talking about this, and I only have my own way of thinking, right? And I'm trying to think about how other people might view this, perhaps from a perspective of it's going to cost me more money and I'm on a fixed income. I would think that would be the biggest argument. This sounds so comprehensive and so well thought out. My response would be a thank you to both of you and applause and not a pushback. And I'm not even in phase 1. So how
I don't think people realize, or maybe they do, but just don't want to believe it because, we've had cesspools forever and those still got a handful of those around. So, it's, you're wrong to say that DEP is going to require us to do this. Okay. You want to take that chance? And in the meantime, they're not wrong in saying that our environment is polluted. Which is, really the reason we're doing this. The reason to do is to clean up our environment, not to save property owners from doing IAs. But that's like obviously a hugely added benefit. So,
is this 2/3 the way the water
Yes.
was?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
But we have to go back to also origins, and I know I don't love to do this, but like this whole thing is to clean up the damage we've already done, right? That's remove the nitrogen from Saw Pond. However, we are ordered to do it.
The state.
We're under a consent order. The federal government lost the lawsuit against the Conservation Law Foundation, and the state DEP lost the lawsuit against the Conservation Law Foundation. And both those two agencies agreed to a timeline for remediation. And they've given us a lot of years. So it's been since 2014.
15 years, 10 years.
So a good 10 years now, and they're seeing progress, so that's good. But, one of the fears that I have is clearly, how does an agency like DEP or the state, how do they determine progress? Well, they've been really patient with our studies, with our testing, with our, water testing, all those programs. But a no vote of town meeting is the clearest way to give the state the answer of, are we making progress or not. Because they've provided the tools with, you know, the funding and so that's what I'm afraid of, that I didn't want to put it in front of the town meeting until I felt we were ready. But at this point, we don't have the luxury to wait.
There's no choice.
Are there penalties for, I'm asking for, I could see a lot of people saying, I bet we could just keep delaying and
Yeah,
delaying and
yeah,
delaying.
yeah.
I'd
There's
love to
no
say there's a
doubt.
Very fine if we don't do this.
Yeah, there's no doubt we can delay this, but
But we don't want to,
we know from water, I mean, water was a perfect example of what delaying cost and, you know, they ordered us to do water. We were brought to our knees to do water.
What could happen too is, if we say no and we're not making progress and they say, okay, we just have to put in an IA system, then whenever a house needs permit, like to change
Mhm.
title or to put on an addition.
You have to put in.
Or the help is gonna have to.
Right, that's usually how
Yeah,
they do.
probably.
I mean, I see it as like a bond rating or a town rating, even though I know where I am on Herringbrook Road, we're not gonna have to do anything. But it's like, it's a town rating. We all need to sort of pay to get to that it's a nitrogen rating.
Yeah,
So
I think it's just
we're on
not
it.
a very, it's nothing that gets, I mean, people will say, oh, I want the police to keep my property safe. I want to, when I dial 911, I want the ambulance to
Somebody
come.
show up.
This is a more esoteric, I don't know what the word is.
You don't.
You-
You
that's
don't
right,
see it,
right.
and really, our livelihood, our very survival depends on it. I mean, how long can we just
Pretend it doesn't exist.
I
pretend?
think it's also leaving the sort of the adage of we want to leave Cape Cod better than we found it, right? It's not sexy,
No,
but it's care of leaving it for our children, our grandchildren, or whomever.
I chalk it all up to what you're saying, like chalk that up to is doing the right thing.
Mhm.
It's we're doing the right thing. And I'd say usually doing the right thing costs you extra money. In this case, doing the right thing is saving you thousands of dollars. And I think that's what people don't
And
understand
that's a great way to
is,
say it, Rich. When we met one-on-one and you talked to me about this, I came away with a really good understanding of, do I want to spend $50,000 for my property? Or do I want to be part of a community where we're all shouldering everything together?
and money aside, let's assume it's no big deal, 50 grand. I'll just put that thing in. Does anyone here want to have to maintain this ridiculous thing that's sitting in your yard?
have
It's gonna
alarms
be-
go up. when
It
doesn't
has to be
work.
alarmed, it has the wrong pressures or wrong flow and
Try to get somebody.
The alarm
to come
goes
and
off.
help you.
it has to be sampled and monitored quarterly.
Anymore.
You have to pump, no more 5 years pumping your Title V, every year pumping, quarterly sampling, quarterly testing, a service contract. People are gonna complain that, there's no way it doesn't cost $4,000 to operate these things. And I've already know people that say it's, I have a service contract, it's $800. Okay, well, when you have the service contract that has to meet these new requirements, we have the beach farm across the street.
Mhm.
That has an IA system. We have a service contract, $3,000. And that doesn't cover-
Annually.
And that doesn't cover anything if it needs maintenance or
They
repair.
just show up.
It's
Maybe,
just the testing.
maybe they
yeah.
show up.
And it's only, the
Yes.
testing, I think, is once a year, not 4 times a year.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize there were alarm systems and everything. Great.
So,
Well,
4,000
that's
seems like a
the
lot,
market.
but when you factor in the annual maintenance contract, you're not gonna have a repair every year, but every few years you're gonna have a repair and you're gonna have to find someone to actually come out and show up.
Good luck.
And, this is it.
On Cape Cod.
I don't wanna
Yeah, right.
speak out of turn, but I believe this to be true, and I'm gonna confirm it with Hillary. But I'm pretty positive if there's a mechanical operation of these things, that there's a requirement to have a power source if the power goes out.
But you have to have a
So you
generator.
have to have a generator.
And so like the people, like I have to have a grinder pump in Orleans, and part of the requirement of putting a grinder pump is I need a generator in case the power goes out. Now, it doesn't have to be a big one, I just need to go connect it and power a small little pump. But
So this is a new curriculum for 4Cs, right?
my point is, who wants just connect me to the pipe, please. You know? Right? You would want all that.
So I have a couple questions still, on you said you were hoping to get some amount of loan forgiveness. What are your thoughts on what that might be and what it might be?
Well, it's really hard to answer. You know, I probably would have felt more comfortable giving you an approximate answer. But, you know, with the recent change in administration, the funding's coming to the state, that's probably less in question. But, we received,
Not funny.
geez, I had the,
14 million.
no, it was
Isn't it
more
14?
than that. I think it was upwards of 14%
Oh,
of the water project as loan forgiveness. So, you know, so let's just say 10% just for talking points. If we got a 10% loan forgiveness, less than what we got for water, that's $17 million.
Mhm, mhm.
So that helps. But that hasn't been factored into any of our
Yeah,
estimating.
okay.
and what they do is we get that number at the end of the year, so it's after they've funded everything and looked at the trust, they decide. Yeah, and then they assign it, they assign you a percentage of loan forgiveness, and we're a community that has priority for that. So that's why we received it with water. We're an environmental justice community.
The other question, I think it was someone on the finance committee asked, was, you know, how much did not getting the 0% for water cost us?
Mhm.
So I went back and looked and, that if we had gotten zero, our interest over the life of our loans, is about $70 million on the water project. $70 million. So if, you know, that's at 2.6% or whatever it is. So that's easy math, that, you know, whatever the interest was, if it was zero, we would have gone off and got rid of all of it. So 70 million.
And I've been saying 30. So I thought it was 30.
So Rich, we have 170 million in the capital budget. How much of that would go to phase one?
100%.
Oh, phase one is
Just,
170
move
million.
that
It
forward
is,
a
Yes.
little
okay.
closer for him, thank you. Pull that,
And
pull
that's
that,
what we're
pull.
looking for in terms of zero interest?
But that 170, the maximum award from the SRF program and in a year is 50 million. So we have to authorize 170. They're only give us 50. Next year, we got to reapply to get another 50. And the third year after that, we have to get the third 50 and then, you know, the fourth piece. But they've guaranteed that they will give it to us.
Give us, yeah.
Whereas next year, they're not going to guarantee the second, third or fourth year. Right.
Right.
So at this point, do we have to issue any bonds?
Well, we will, once we start, you know, I don't know what the start date would be, but just for sake of argument, say it's January 1, 2026.
Mhm.
We'll need, so whatever the work that needs to be done. You know, a plant is probably 50 or $60 million. And that's a 18-month project.
Right.
So you probably split that in half. Let's just say it's $60 million. So we'd probably borrow that in thirds. 20 million to start on a ban, use that money. When that ban comes due, you roll that over and borrow another 20 million. And then you get to the end, then you finalize and permanently finance the 60 million. But that's through the SRF program.
They do.
They let us, so it's much easier through SRF program because they just let us draw the money down as we need it. We don't need to temporarily do it and pay interest and all that stuff.
And we also have an application for USDA funding, which is a lot less money, but it could cover a percentage of it. And they have a guaranteed loan forgiveness, a higher amount of loan forgiveness. So there's an interest rate to that loan, but they give you more loan forgiveness. So only Rich will be able to figure out whether that's advantageous or not. We can't apply for that until, we won't know about it until July or August. It's just a different funding cycle because it's federal.
Assume,
Was that,
assume it passes the town.
Yeah,
And I think USDA, a lot of their funding was cut, wasn't it?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they're, you know, we've had meetings with them, we've put in the application, they're receiving information, so we're, you know, going through those motions as
And we
well.
never know, if it's Tuesday, it
Right,
may be cut, and Thursday,
It may-
back.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
who
So-
knows?
Yeah, I don't know if that funding, the USDA has been challenged in the courts, a lot of those.
Yeah, they have been.
In terms of food for kids, we're just moving on and we're fundraising, you know, in order to make sure it happens this
Yeah.
summer.
Go ahead.
I wasn't finished on my, question about the Cayman Islands. How flush is that? I mean, so the only way it gets funding is from short-term rental tax from all the towns. Like, if more and more towns go on for sewers, are they gonna start not having enough funding to give us anything?
I mean, we haven't, last year we were fine, this year we're fine, there's no indication that they're overextended, and I think what's gonna happen now is that it's actually gonna be advantageous for them, the slowdown, if there is a slowdown, if there's a cap on funding for the SRF program, if they don't guarantee projects and projects stall, then our coffers will be able to collect more than goes out.
And didn't they get a supplement last year from the state?
They did,
Right.
yeah.
So the state kind of capitalized it a little bit too, with the
Mhm.
infusion.
I mean, I think the state understands that they've put mighty pressure on the Cape, and so they're trying to do their part, you know.
Go ahead.
Okay, you go.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking at the annual debt service calculations and your worksheet here. And you've got, as we have discussed in the past a bit, the CPA, 1.5%. You figured that, we get, CPA takes in through the taxes about 1.2 million, so that's how you got the 600. What does the CPA committee have to do to proceed with this? Because, you know, we already passed what we were hoping
Yeah.
to pass.
So
It
we're,
was the 3% exemption for some.
so we're
folks.
too late for July
Oh,
1.
I know that, I know that.
So this would be something that we'd have to, we'd first approach the CPC committee, talk about it. And how that impacts you, and then, whatever the CPC committee thinks or recommends. Would probably come to the finance committee for some discussion, and then ultimately the select board. To update them. Finalize it or not as part of the funding plan, and in any event, it needs to go to town meeting to adopt that
Mhm.
change.
Mhm.
The other part of it is to not only to adopt the change in the CPC surcharge rate, but you also have to accept the surcharge rate on the water infrastructure fund.
Right,
So
right.
it's kind of a two-part
So it's
process.
two pieces. It's reducing or changing the 3% to 1.5%,
Right.
essentially for CPA projects, and 1.5% for wastewater.
Right, and adding
And
that,
so that would be two
separate votes.
two
yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
And for the 50 million for next year, would that have to be every year, assuming it's 50 or whatever it is, an warrant article also?
No. The authorization, SRF won't commit any money to us until we have the authorization for the whole project. So we have to get the authorization for 170 million, or they will not give us the 50. So we can't do it 50. We have to do it the whole.
No,
project.
but if we get permission, we have the 50 for this year. I mean, is this?
We do not.
So, no, that's not on this warrant, but it's going to be at the town meeting on.
Right.
I have the date,
June.
coming June 23rd. So assuming that it passes on June 23rd. When is that for fiscal year 2027?
It's immediate. And so what we're asking at June 23rd is not for 50 million. What we're asking for at June 23rd is the 170 million.
170 million.
You're asking for the 170 million on June 23rd.
Yeah.
Over the next 4 years.
Okay, so you're not, so it's not going to be the 50 million.
No.
The 50 million is part of the 170.
Right.
Mhm.
50 million is what you're gonna get reimbursed in the first year,
Right.
but you gotta get the whole project off.
Yeah.
and it's all or nothing.
So that's why we wouldn't have to have anything in the
No.
warrant in following years.
Thank God.
That'll be a mess.
I'm sorry?
That would be a mess.
Well, you
Yeah,
couldn't move forward.
horrible.
Couldn't move forward with, we get this all the time. Some projects you could do in pieces parts, right? But not this. I mean, you can't build half a collection system and have nowhere to send it.
Or a
You can't,
treatment
you wouldn't, you wouldn't build a plant
That-
and
that
then
might not be
have no
what's
pipes bringing anything to it.
I mean, it's not,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the consultants can figure out how to, as they said, we won't be going out to bid until next year, right? Even if this gets approved. So the first year, it's really easy to not spend it all. But then they can slow it down, but they can't just build it in pieces.
Can't build part of it, right?
Oh, we could. I mean,
It's not an option.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not an option.
I can't imagine anyone approving that.
But it's just like water, we can't dig up Route 6
Right.
in the middle of summer. It'd have to-
Right, so you do have to pace things anyway.
I'm
So,
hoping this feels as dire as the water did, that when it went through.
People sort of remember.
Well,
I remember.
I don't think so.
Remember how
Only
dire
5
it
years
was?
ago,
The
so-
kids couldn't use the bubblers and it just was.
So I have some more questions. How is, well, I guess the meeting on January 3rd is, 23rd is at the high school
Yes,
at 5:30?
yes.
Okay, that was what information I didn't have.
And we'll have a separate warrant that goes out and we think that this will be in that separate warrant.
This,
Yes,
Okay, and that's gonna be sent out like
to every
Warrant.
household.
okay, every household, okay. And how do you have a plan as to how it's going to be presented at the meeting?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
We don't have a plan for Monday, Mary.
Right. She's asking a lot. I mean, what is that? That's a miracle.
oh, wing it. It's like the person on Sunday.
We have a tiny team, a tiny team.
Cards.
Okay, so it's the 23rd at the high school at 5:30.
In the auditorium.
Yeah.
We do have at least 3, I think we're up to 4 now, information sessions that are going and the consultants will be at those information sessions. So if people have technical questions, they can ask technical questions. So we are prepared, to do a lot of education between now and June 23rd.
And like I said, we sent out a lot of flashes and social media posts on pieces of that wastewater book. So if you want to go look at them, they're there, but they're also, the website for this project has come a long way in just the past week.
Mhm.
So all those posts are on our website
Mhm.
and we'll have, I don't know if it's there yet, but it will be an interactive map of the phase 1 collection system so people can put in if they are in the plan or not.
So
So
people will
We're
be,
coming along pretty quick.
people will know whether they're in the system or not?
Yes.
Okay,
Mostly.
I mean, it's subject to change. We're only at not even really 30% design of everything, but
mhm.
This is really well laid out.
Are there areas of town that aren't in that good insensitive?
the only one, oh, maybe not the only one, but Brewster doesn't have a big of a challenge.
No, I mean our town. The whole
Oh,
town.
Yep,
Pretty
Town
much.
is not good insensitive.
Some of it is under with Orleans, some of it is with Wellfleet, and some of it is just ours.
because it's not the borders of the town, it's the borders of the watersheds, right?
So what's Town Cove?
Orleans and Easton.
And they're working on that now, so that's good. I mean, we at least have, they're working on that piece. We're working on this piece.
And just to get it out there, I think a common question we're gonna get, especially when you talk about the south of town, is just connect to Orleans.
Yeah.
That would be great. I'd love to do that too. But it's just not that easy because, the biggest challenge isn't the amount of flow you generate. The biggest challenge is recharging once you've processed it. And there's limitations on sites. So I think they have, and they don't really know yet their answer because they're still building out their system.
Mhm.
But their big concern is that they don't have enough recharge capacity at their wastewater site to put it back into the ground. So if they don't know if they have enough for themselves, they're certainly not gonna allow us to send more to them.
And the Side of it would be if we were down the road ahead a bit, Orleans residents saying, oh, we'll just look into Eastham.
I think we're working very well together with Orleans on this one, and we have been for several years now, which is really good. It's lovely, because there were days not too long ago when we wouldn't even talk, I mean, the two towns wouldn't talk about it at all. So we're on the path. They're happy that we're on the path. They're supporting us. They're offering to show their plant to residents if people want to go look. They're being very helpful. But we are in a watershed, management plan with them together, and we are working together. And I think if they had capacity, like the Rock Harbor area might make really good sense to hook up to Orleans. And I think they'll be open to it if they have capacity, but they're building too. And it's,
Well, the practical reality is,
They're still connected.
yeah, they're still,
20 years from now, because, we're not doing the south end of town, we're doing the north end. So you're not gonna build it all the way down this end of town and then convey it all the way up to Orleans, even if they could, But, if you can accept flow as a treatment plant, you'd accept flow, because the more flow, the better, because your costs incrementally don't change so much, and you're getting more flow that you can charge a rate for. It helps subsidize the operation. So Wellfleet's kind of going through the same phase that we are with some planning, but they have much less nitrogen reduction in most of the town, so IAs do actually work. So they're looking at a plan to subsidize individual IA systems. Again, it will work to meet their nitrogen reduction goals. But now you've got all these IAs on private property, and those property owners are gonna have to bear the cost of them operating them for the future. So I'm not sure that, how well, I'm not involved in their process. I don't know about their approach, but that's their approach. Orleans is in the middle of their construction. Chatham got a killer deal many, many years ago. I think 85% of their wastewater plant was paid for by outside sources.
and everyone else on the Cape thought they were crazy for doing wastewater.
And now Brewster kind of has a little bit of reprieve because they have a lot of open space and a lot of bigger lot sizes, so they don't have the nitrogen removal requirements that others do. Harwich, Dennis, Yarmouth, and
Yeah.
Barnstable all have active construction plans, and then Mashpee and Falmouth as well.
Who isn't doing?
Provincetown did it in the 80s.
Okay.
But they have an extension that's active now, or was last year? I can't
I don't
remember,
think
but
it
they're
was the-
doing one piece and that's it. They're done.
I don't feel like maybe it was the 80s, but I mean, it was like 10, 15 years ago, but maybe they replaced it all.
They
With that
started.
high
yeah,
pressure
yeah, yeah.
system.
Yes.
So I remember July 4th weekend, it backed up and caused a big problem. Everybody had to shut down.
Yeah, that's right. They
Yeah.
had a
Right.
problem. That was a nightmare.
So, but they're looking for
Many
extensions.
towns that aren't doing
Sounds like
something.
Truro is not.
Everybody's doing something.
Have done or are.
Brewster,
Brewster's the only one. They have a great plan, but it doesn't have a treatment plan. They're the only one.
Something going to town meeting about.
Yes, yeah.
planning.
And I think, I've been looking, we've been
Maybe
following the
Last one, again.
Wellfleet plan. And I think there's pros and cons to that. For me, the cons are if you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 smaller IAs or plants that have to be maintained, then that to me is a lot harder management wise over time than having one treatment plant that, you maintain. And
Yeah, I, done this over the years for a few towns, Yarmouth, Dennis, Harwich, Eastham now. But, the end result, I'm pretty confident in saying is it's well worth the money spent to spend more on the capital to get an easier operating cost.
yes,
More efficient operation.
especially for
It's the annual
municipality.
operating costs that are going to kill you over time, because the capital, that drops off in 10, 20, and 30 years.
And I was in Wellfleet when they chose, it was presented, you asked how it was presented at town meeting, how this is gonna be, but water was presented at town meeting in Wellfleet as little water or big water. And of course, they chose little water.
Because of the price.
It cost $4.8 million. Big water was only 12 million. But anyway, they chose Little Water and that system has less than like 150 connections and it has never been, it will never be self-sustaining. So every year the operating budget has to transfer money
Yeah,
and
that wasn't a very good marketing. Should have used inferior.
Exactly.
Superior.
it was my boss at the time. He wasn't,
About the operating cost. They're,
So it was built into my projections here on page 3.
I didn't want him to, but he did.
So on page 3 of this handout,
The handout that you just,
this one.
okay.
So on the right side, the community-based system projections. You get a debt service estimate using, we're hoping it's 0%, so in which case it would be 0. But I'm putting in $500 that we're not gonna have perfection here and it is gonna cost us something on the capital. So $500 and then I put in the operating costs. It's $1 million. We're projecting $1.5 million annually for operating costs. So what you see on this page is the tax impact of the debt service and the operating cost to the median valued home. So it comes out to $717 of property taxes for the debt service and the operating piece. That doesn't assume any rates that we might charge, by the way.
so, people that connect, you're gonna have to pay something. for it.
Probably, right.
So that'll come.
So it'll reduce the property tax hit, right? But again, this is a great finance committee discussion. If we get past this point, then we can start contemplating and kind of gaming this out. How do we want to philosophically do this?
And then we do have good programs already established for helping people pay for connections.
So just so you know, the details of how I,
No, we're not gonna, no, especially in this bidding environment.
so I took that total $717. And then I inflated the operating costs. The debt service isn't going to change. But the operating costs, I applied a 3% inflation rate and I did that on both the IA operating costs and the town operating costs just to be consistent. So you see at 20 years later, the additional property taxes go up to 881 because the higher operating cost. So all I did is I took the average of all of that 20 years and that came up to the, was it 792, I think, number?
It was year 11, 792.
So,
Yeah, year
790, 792.
well, that makes sense that that's the average since I.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that.
The median.
So, So the 792 is just an average of 20 years. And then I just rounded up to 1,000 for easy talking points. And if you did the same on the cost of doing nothing, IA side of things, you take the average annual cost and that came to $7,000.
Wow.
And a couple of key points on this is so you know, I applied and this at the moment, I don't think is true, but I'm being very conservative in case somebody want to challenge how we do this. There's a septic credit of $18,000 you can get from the state. I don't think IAs qualify. They might in some cases, but I think that is likely to change.
No, I would think that they'd want you to.
I think that's what he put
Yeah,
in
yeah.
too, but, and the other thing is it's not refundable currently, but that's also hopefully likely to change. So you're not getting $18,000 up front to offset your 50,000, you're getting a few $1,000s a year until you get your full 18,000, but I didn't account for, I just assumed that you got the full 18 to offset the 50. So that's just being conservative. Theoretically it could be worse, but, and likewise, I didn't put anything on the town side to reduce the costs because the town doesn't get a tax credit. But this is a piece of information. I was just talking to someone just today actually about this. There is a proposal to make this $18,000 septic tax credit refundable, meaning that because it also is only, you only get it if you owe taxes. So if you're retired on fixed income and don't have tax liability, you're not going to get it.
Right.
But if it's a refundable credit, you will get it, which makes sense because you put out 50 grand, you should get your 18,000. Well, in my mind, what also makes sense is why would the state agree? I mean, I understand why they would agree to pay, let's use Eastham example, 5,700 people, $18,000. Well, why not agree to give the town the equivalent of 18,000 times the 1,000 people on our community system as a subsidy? So if you can do one, why can't you do the other? So that's what I'm gonna work on getting that thrown in.
So I have another question. Assuming this passes, what is the timing? Obviously, we need wastewater up near tea time in order to proceed to do anything
Mm.
with the density of housing up there.
Mhm.
What's the time, by passing this, what would be the timing of when we thought that we might be able to use that land to start developing as far as housing was concerned?
We're planning on I don't think it would be any more than this, but probably about a 3-year construction period.
Mhm.
So we'd be on target for 2029
For starting or
for a possible start.
Or you
if
could
we
start
get
sooner.
funding.
If you knew it,
Oh, yeah, I understand.
if you knew the wastewater project's going through, there's no reason you can't engage with developers before the end of the construction period.
Mhm.
They can,
Yeah,
they can
yeah,
do their
they got it
designs
on the-
contemplating that they can connect
Right,
in.
right.
I
right.
think, Mary, the difference for me is if wastewater passes and we move forward, then we will be confident to issue an RFP for
Mhm.
development. So we'll be starting to look for developers
Right.
and start down that path, because it does take a long time, even with the new monies for housing, it's going to take a long time to get the right developer to
Mhm.
put the funding together.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's gonna work out okay, but if wastewater doesn't get funded, then we have
Mm.
decision-making
Yeah.
to do about,
Yes, it's gonna be.
well, no, it's not impossible. It's just we'd have to then,
Figure out another alternative.
we'd have to figure out another engineering alternative. So a big IA treatment on tea time, which would be similar to what
The one
we
did
have
in
at Nauset Green, except
Nauset Green, right.
that tea time is in the zone 2 of the water system,
That's
so
right.
it
That-
add,
that's
it would
another-
add additional treatment.
Another issue. Yeah.
So there are issues.
Yeah.
But, so if wastewater passes it, it's the path that we had planned,
Mhm,
right? So we can
mhm,
move forward with the
mhm,
path
mhm.
that we had planned.
So tea time it's in zone 2, I mean, in phase 2?
It's in the zone 2
Of the
of the
water.
water well that's north, the northern water well.
So what's? Thought it would be in phase.
No, you're
one.
confusing phases with the water system well zones.
Oh,
It's
So we
protection
got
area.
a water tank off Nauset Road,
right.
and there's a radius around that you can't do certain things. So zone 2 of that radius
Got it.
has limitations on
Yeah.
recharging of
In phase
wastewater.
2.
There's more treatment.
And we have 3 wells, so we have 3 of those big circles, so it's it's complicated. Teeny tiny. And even that will require extra treatment.
Were the engineers or the designers with the up to the 30%? Were they gonna do cost estimates for us at that point? I think.
They were, but I think it,
30% Cost estimates are almost useless.
yeah, environmental partners we didn't get what we needed to do a true cost estimate, so we forego that, and we did make design changes, so now we're,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
They're supposed to.
It's part of the 30%, but we wanted to wait.
Because. Sort of back up on that 170.
Well, Jackie's been calculating, our other OPM has been calculating all along, like she's checking prices, but I think it's just too soon, you know?
But they didn't do any value engineering on that estimate?
Yes, they did not so much value engineering, they did an engineering assessment with notes. So basically, they've turned in all their notes to,
But I think the value
and
engine,
part of that was reassigning,
But nothing it cost.
nothing cost-wise that I've seen.
well, I mean, I think, the reality of it wasn't a true 30% design phase. So I think we're still waiting on that. And right, so, what you would get, so the value engineering usually starts in between the 30% and 60%.
Hmm.
And we're not at the true 30%, even though they called it a 30% design review meeting. You didn't get all the details you needed to be at 30% and to just start doing your value engineering. But, Jackie's point, we made changes. And we've, that's still a little, probably might need a little bit of tweaking still, so. Once we have that, then we can hopefully finalize and get to the value engineering phase. But once we get to the 60% phase, things will be pretty locked in at that point.
And actually, the last meeting we had with them, we've added an additional GHG engineer.
Hmm.
Such as they didn't want any more.
I don't want any more engineers, but
But he was
what
there.
they said was, look, we need to move forward with this and we need these changes for town meeting. And so they added an engineer and he was really good.
Yeah.
So we like him a lot and he made more progress in 2 weeks than we've made in a long time. So
Now and then,
things are looking up.
these changes probably didn't add much of anything to the cost, right? Just moving this building around, but
We have to do some more testing now,
To do a little bit of, a little bit of,
draft and stuff,
tweaking,
right?
drafting.
Right.
And then, we're talking about, it's really the 30 to 60. So the next stage, how do we filter those buildings? What HVAC systems do we need? What kind of extra sound control can we add? Because we are, closer to a neighborhood than some other plants. So we want to make sure that we're using all those technologies, and those, no doubt, will add some expense.
and you just reminded me, because you also mentioned about visiting the Orleans plant, so I just want to get it out there. One of the key differences, because
Yes.
you'll hear this all the time, is Orleans accepts septage as opposed to
Or
And-
is what did you say?
accepts septage in addition to being a wastewater treatment. So there's a significant difference. Wastewater treatment is delivered through pipes underground, comes up underneath the building, goes through processing, filtering within a confined building. Septage is pumped out of a Title V tank, put in a truck, driven to a facility, and then pumped out, usually in an open environment. And those are the smells you get from a septage plant. And if you drive by exit 8 in Yarmouth and you smell something, because we'll hear that comparison, that's not a wastewater treatment plant. It's a septage plant only.
I thought they built a separate building for the discharge of the septic over in Orleans. Didn't they?
Oh, it's amazing. So they spent a fortune building a
Right.
garage. So the pumper truck, the truck
in-
with the septage goes
right
in
into-
and then it comes down and there's
Right.
like this airlock system, but it's still pumped out of the truck into the
Right,
chamber.
But in that confined space.
In that confined space, but I'm sure.
You gotta
that
open
there's
the door,
Yeah,
for-
I do.
you gotta for the next truck
Yeah.
to come in.
Because I know in Chatham, when we looked at Chatham, they do not have that system. So they said to us, the only time there are odors are when the septage is being unloaded.
So that's a big difference that people have to understand is, when you smell something at exit 8, that's not a wastewater treatment plant, that's a septage plant. And same thing when you go to Orleans, if you smell something, you're probably smelling the septage. So not to say that you can guarantee that you won't smell anything ever at a wastewater treatment plant, but it's not the same.
Would say, smell it.
No, yeah, there's
Yes,
somebody
because
near-
basically
there that-
the neighbors were saying to me, the neighborhood, and I understand, no harm, no foul. They were saying, you can't promise us that there'll never be smells. And I said, no, I can't promise you that there'll never be smells. But what I can promise you, of course, they didn't put this in the newspaper, is that we're going to do everything we can to mitigate that so that you don't have smells or noise or
I think the
trucks
the
coming,
biggest smell you get,
Dump in the summertime, a hot summer day.
I think the biggest smell you get from a wastewater treatment plant is probably the extraction of grit and sludge,
Yeah.
which is like a, every other day occurrence. So hopefully we can mitigate that by, doing the same system that Orleans does, making it an enclosed space so that offloading happens in a garage,
I think even cleaning up the space, I know it's in here and I read it. You're gonna put fencing and landscaping and
Well, we have to read retaining walls and stuff, so that'll help us do some landscape.
even just visually for the people in. the
It is,
neighborhood.
it's
Because you
awful.
don't wanna,
I
you don't
know.
wanna see, that could just make
Yeah.
it, it's a nice little finishing touch. It's gonna cost, of course, but it's a nice.
It's hard to visualize what it might look like at the moment, but eventually we'll get drawings with different perspectives, right? But conceptually, as we understand it now, that east side is kind of on a slope. So you gotta dig out some of that slope and put a retaining wall. And the beds will be below grade, so you won't see them from the road. It's A, and then of course we can also put fencing up on top of that retaining wall.
Or trees or
Or
whatever.
trees.
Yeah.
Um, and I think probably the big, I mean, obviously you can see the DPW garage a bit, but I think the most visually fit thing in that whole area is the salt shed. And that has to be moved. I mean, it has to be torn down anyway, honestly.
Pretty ugly.
But can't be there for the development of the site, so that will be removed and a new one will be put behind the DPW building.
And there's
So-
really no screening. There's like like when I drove by a few times and then I drove by the neighborhoods to look, but when you drive by, you'll notice the center part. So the part between the transfer station and the DPW building, there is very little screening in that middle part. So that's where the beds might be, and that's where we need to do most of the work, because we basically have a little chain link fence and scrub pines.
And to the extent there are OV buildings there, that they will be on the west side. And, the other thing we've heard is that, we're gonna look like the plant in Barnstable. Barnstable plant was built, 50-ish years ago. And it's a big concrete building and it's, I think, like 3 million gallons per day plant. Ours is like, 400, 500,000 max. Much smaller plant. So in that handout, it's the bottom of that page. I think you got it there. Patty, is we're more akin to what Mashpee has developing.
It's nice.
So, that's what we're trying to go for, something like that. That's part of the design that we got to go through with the capital project committee.
So when did this thing come up at town meeting?
Well,
Article 9?
might come up, could come up at Article 9 as a reason why, we didn't think things out well enough. Could come up at Article was it 4 or something for the eminent domain for the location of the pump station. It could,
Oh, up the street here near the salt, up the street near the salt pond.
yeah,
Right.
because that's the primary reason for
Right,
taking
right,
is,
right.
it was written up in the Cape Cod Times as we might be able to do something for housing. Which, yeah, we might, but that's not the reason we're doing it. The main reason we're doing it is for stormwater and a pump station. And then, then we have a thing on enterprise fund for wastewater, so it could come up there.
And none of this information, we're talking about another warrant, a second warrant that'll be sent out to everybody as far as the next meeting, the next town meeting is concerned. But none of that information is going to get to people. We see this is a Thursday and the town meeting is Monday, so.
We
The-
hope to have this booklet or a version of it for town meeting.
Oh, okay.
As a handout.
Passing it out at
Yes.
town meeting. Oh,
Because
okay.
I think it will have the info sessions on it, and so we want.
Oh, good,
people to-
okay.
And almost all the information in here
Has already.
has
gone
already
out.
been put out.
Yeah, but I'm just
posted.
saying that everybody doesn't.
No, and I like it all in one
Oh,
place.
Yes, yeah.
So we're gonna see if we can get enough printed for Monday. If not, we'll, do 2 batches or whatever.
Okay, that was.
How many people do you think are gonna show up online?
4,000.
We never, ever know. We never know. Now, normally this warrant is honestly such a snooze that one would think that we'd be worried about quorum.
Getting a quorum. How many what do we need for? a
Last
quorum?
year it was like 228 or
Okay,
230.
because I have something a year or so ago, it's 241, but.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah,
It goes up every year, a few people, but this year, I don't know. The auditorium holds 750 people,
right,
so,
right.
and we have the cafeteria if we need it. But I'm hoping we don't need it.
So I have a question about Monday night. Are the, one of the last times that we met there when we were outside, we did have, I think the police, they used little like golf carts or stuff like that to help people that, depending upon where they parked to get to where they needed to go. And obviously construction is still going on up there. What are the plans for helping people if they need to park a distance from the entryway there?
Adam mentioned something, and I can't remember whether it's a golf cart or something else, but not as extensive as we had that Saturday,
That-
because
that,
there
yeah.
will be, if you can't park on the side, there is the parking lot in the front.
Right, right.
And it is a walk, no matter where you come in, but from the side, it is not
Yeah,
as
yeah.
much of a walk.
Carpool.
So I'm
Yeah.
telling people to come early.
Yeah,
Carpool.
carpooling would be awesome, because really,
And bring your neighbors, you know, it's, if you can walk, but your neighbor has a hard time,
You could drop
bring
them
your
off.
neighbor and drop them off.
oh yeah, that could be too.
We don't have any transfers at this meeting.
I can't hear you, what you
No,
said, Fred.
No transfers at this meeting, right?
No.
Finance meeting.
So if we get this passed on May 23rd,
June.
June.
excuse me, June 23rd. As far as finances go, it would not take effect until 26, 27. That's when we would start spending.
So we probably borrow money, 6 to 9 months after, but we still gotta finish the design.
Yeah.
So that might be even closer to the end of FY 26,
The very earliest is.
which would
like
put us in
late fall or
27.
winter.
That's the ballot. too.
Yeah, it has to pass at the ballot, which is
Third.
the next day. The June 24th.
But the impact on 27 would be relatively small because it's only maximum on the 50 million, but we won't have borrowed all of the 50 million.
Right.
So it'll be something small. So it'll be a ramp up. And so
next
I
year,
would
it'll be
say
the
that
next year.
I haven't scheduled it out, if it passes, then I'll figure all this out, but my guess would be full effect would not for 5 years. 27, 28, 29, 31 or 32. And that gives us some time to drop off some of the water debt.
Is this something that we need to vote on today?
No,
Okay. But wait until,
Information for us.
We might wanna
Oh,
do
when is the warrant going out? May 19th?
May 19th.
I think so. It has to be to the printer at May
well,
19th.
that's what I'm looking at.
We might want to find a city recommendation for that.
Yeah.
Well, our, Mira has on our agenda that the next meeting would normally be May 22nd. It's a Thursday.
Maybe we can move it a
Mira's
week
saying
early.
yes.
I'm sorry?
Mira's saying yes, you're correct.
just check and make sure you're paying attention, Mira.
And you're saying.
am,
warrant's
I am.
going out on May 19th?
Yeah, is that a Friday?
We can move it to May 15th.
May, May,
Next week.
see what,
Oh,
May
May 19th 's
ninth,
a
May,
Monday.
no, well, May 1st, today's May 1st, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, that's a Monday. May 19th is a Monday.
Just do that.
Yeah.
Well, today's the 1st, so 1, 2. 3, 4.
Obviously.
I'm sorry?
Said obviously.
Obviously what?
It's a Monday, it's the first, so.
Well, no, the 19th
have
is
to
a Monday.
schedule somewhere. too.
The 19th is a Monday.
So we can do
And-
the 8th or the 15th, depending on the
Be the
warrant.
23rd.
There's something we can.
So
see, right?
we can't do it until we have the warrant.
Until we have the warrant, yeah.
And then coming up the
Meeting is June
19th.
23rd.
That's getting mailed. It's fine.
We need.
Going to the
But it
printer.
has to be
Supposed to
out
be on
14
the
days, it has to
22nd.
be out in
Too late.
14 days
15th.
before.
Oh. You're saying
Because
it's-
we're the third Thursday of the month.
Okay,
So
we'll
that's
say
what-
the 23rd.
No.
We
No,
meet,
well,
but
Paige-
the
Paige, right.
finance,
We're
the
supposed to meet
finance
the
committee
third
is meeting on the 15th
Thursday,
because
so that
it's
would be
the
Perfect.
15th.
So that's gonna work.
Yeah.
Let's meet on the 15th. and then we can-
Our usual time is the third Thursday.
That's the 15th.
Yeah.
Because today's the first,
One
we're,
eight
we're
fifteen.
finance
One
people,
of
we
those-
feel like,
Oh, boy.
We all have gifts.
So-
Mine is counting Thursdays in May.
Can I ask one question on the financials before we schedule that?
But just before you
Oh,
do
sorry.
that, I just want to get the date here. So we're meeting on
Let's make it the
our next
15th.
meeting
15th
is going to be Thursday, May
May
15th.
at 5:30.
No, at 4 o'clock.
Or- I was just checking to see if you were.
This is
paying
past my bedtime.
May 15th at 4 o'clock.
Correct.
I have to get that
Yes.
on the calendar. Because if that's our normal time, but we haven't been meeting on a normal time, so
Yeah.
we've got.
It is on the calendar.
It is on the calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a repetitive.
Oh, geez, that's not a problem.
Okay.
Well, maybe it's not.
I know we've been seeing the 22nd on our agendas, that's why.
Well, yeah, that's on the agenda, but I don't know that.
Let's see.
why
But the
that was on there.
22nd is not even the Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
It is, if the 15th is Thursday, to add 7.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't need I need a calculator for a lot of things, but not that.
But that would be the fourth.
I'm looking right now,
It
15th.
was 5 Thursdays in May, so it messes.
Wow.
it's
Five
Unusual.
Thursdays, yeah,
I
so
just
the-
the East Ham dog owners.
Yeah, because today is the first
Oh, so
Thursday and
maybe
it's the
it's
first.
not on the calendar.
Oh,
yet.
dog owners, that might, no.
I
that's-
have that
I don't-
candidates night is May 12th. Candidates night is May
Perfect,
12th at
okay.
6 o'clock at Town Hall.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't see us on East Ham though, either.
You will.
Okay, you will.
now we can add it.
Mira will do it. Mira does it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Patty. Go.
Oh, no, I didn't know,
You
I just
you
want to
had a
ask one question.
financial question.
On this on this finance page, which is, we understand, but for, the only finance page I've seen is where you talk about the average cost to the median value home to be $792 and rounding up to 1,000. Are you, and I don't want people to get hung up and immediately say, our taxes are going up $1,000 a year. Is there a simple, are you gonna like a simplified way say, it could be 1,000 a year, but we're, based on programs that are available and certain funding, it could be as low as $37.42.
No,
So, I mean,
no,
He
you
won't
don't
do
think-
it. He won't do it.
no, we want to present what we kind of think is probably
it's more the most,
I wouldn't say most likely, because I think we will be less,
yeah.
but I would say worst case, maybe.
Cause
I mean, it could get worse, but I
you don't
don't.
want people to, then if you don't get it, you don't want people to say, what, you told me it was gonna be.
It's-
Exactly.
$12 and
Well,
it wasn't."
And I don't want to be nickel and diming it, because, people are going to disagree with our estimates. So it's like, all right, we'll disagree. So I'm saying it's a $6,000 savings. Make whatever changes you want. Maybe it's only a $4,000 savings. So you don't like that either? Whatever.
I mean,
So,
the one thing that is kind of key is if we vote yes in June, we're looking at these columns,
closer to the left, right?
Yeah.
but if we vote no, we're looking at this, really.
Yep.
And this costs a lot more than.
Mhm.
And that's
Plus
that's also
$7.6 million a year.
optimistic because,
Are you willing to stand up at the microphone and say that? Vanna
But that's,
White.
I mean, that's really what,
holding up the-
so, but you got a good point, Patty. So intentionally didn't put the details in with the sheet because I think people get bogged down.
it's complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
complicated.
I think it's easier to show them
It's complicated.
that one pager. We think it's 7,000 versus $1,000.
Right.
And if you want the details, I'll send you the details and we can individually argue about, what should be there or not be there. But for the mass of people that really don't care, they just want to cut to the chase, it's 7 versus 1,000.
Or if people ask though, would you say, well, there's no guarantees, we are gonna be applying for a certain relief,
I-
but we just can't,
Yeah.
we can't I can't even tell you what it is,
If-
I can't guarantee it.
Well, if people ask, I'd say the most optimistic scenario is this does not have a tax impact to us. Matter of fact, we could save $2.39. So, it's gonna, we think it's gonna be
That,
anywhere between 0 and
200.
Put it in your IRA.
I would say probably the middle column, the middle scenario with the USDA, or no, middle column with the SRF only, $593.80.
Yeah, yeah.
that 590, and that's
So-
where that 590.
So call it
came from.
$600. So we think it's probably somewhere between $100 and $600.
Per year.
Yeah.
Not per tax.
If we get it passed now, right? I went with 500 in my estimate,
That's what I saw, so you just because you wanted a round number,
Mhm.
round figure.
and I wanted to be on the high end.
Okay.
And then,
If it's
the-
less, he's a hero.
then the $1.5 million
You know you're a hero.
operating costs is on top of that,
A Superman
which
came
brings you to 792, whatever it was.
Seven,
And then you round up again to 1,000. So, we're very conservative all along. We're on the high end of where we think we would be if you do it now,
What fiscal year is collective bargaining?
next year.
Next year,
Next year.
next year.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
It's always something.
So if I looked, because Jerry Sarasel had asked me this question too, he wasn't a big fan of the rounding up, but.
Oh, he hates the rounding up.
um,
Are you kidding me? He's
But if
with
we,
me.
but if we went what we kind of think is the worst case with, if all these things came to fruition on the SRF, only at a 2.6%. That's 594, and then I've got, operating costs of 217. That's 811. So, I guess I inflated it to 1,000, so but it's not 792 to 1,000, it's 811, kind of worst case. So.
Okay, there's a big difference between 811 and 1,000. I think people would digest 811 a lot better than.
It's like saying.
It's like
You're right.
Things cost $999,090.
They'd rather hear retail, we always price things as, $335.
The other thing that you gotta consider too is the 811 is the median valued home. So it will be 1,000 or even more than 1,000 if you've got $1.5 million home.
What's the median value right now? Maybe somebody may
Eight.
ask that.
798 or something.
I think it's almost 800, like
Yeah.
790.
800, yeah.
Hard to believe.
I'm a fan of the round, yeah.
Well, you guys can speak to that when we present it and just say,
Well, I mean, I think it's a two-way street. We definitely, I think people tended to trust us. We tell the truth. We're honest. We ask for what we think we need. So I think we have that reputation. So I don't want to do anything that would tarnish, especially Rich's credibility with the citizens, but
But the 800 sounds better.
it just does, and I think it could be lower. I think it's hard to.
Well, I don't
It's
want to-
it's a very difficult position to be projecting numbers in this environment.
You don't have it in
It's
your
like-
pocket.
it's like
He is brilliant
insane.
and he has given us many scenarios to look at. And I think it's the best we can do right now.
but also,
But we should keep it simple.
I agree, because
I think that keeping it
Yeah,
simple
yeah.
would be,
This is great stuff, but
I think
if I had a number code, I had a color
the
code.
more you talk, the deeper you.
Yeah,
you
people get-
dig things.
Well, this is for you too. We haven't given
Right.
this out because,
Right.
people,
People won't understand it and they'll immediately go to the biggest.
it also gives us a little bit of cover and protection in the event that it ends up being not 170. So if it needs to be 180
That's true.
and we need to operate ask for an additional appropriation, listen, we're still within our $1,000,
It's a good.
That's a great point, and that's why you do what
That's
you
what-
do.
it's an extremely good point. It really is.
Yeah, it's a great point. He's
And
covering
the,
covering
a
all
lot
of
of
us.
people are used to because you do it a lot, the effect of the median.
No, the median value,
Yeah.
median home.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can do the math.
Make
whether they're above
make a
it.
ratio, yeah.
I mean, we have to do something that's fixed or else everything would be different, right? We'd be,
Yeah, yeah.
and we did that with water.
yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
You want to put on the cover of this town meeting in the date, so
Oh, yeah, we could.
people might.
Is it on the back? Does she have it on the back?
you know what? I think the
It is, it's on the
pictures-
last. it's on the
We
last
really
page.
did it, and the picture is so beautiful to look at. Do you want your town to look like this?
Yeah, that is Salt Pond. I mean, she was clever. It's a good,
Yeah, it's a pretty view.
It's not on the back, it's just that the information sessions are on the back.
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so
Yeah,
we'll-
maybe just-
that's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
idea.
Yes, that's special
Maybe,
town meeting.
Yeah.
in a corner so that it's not interrupting the beautiful
Beautiful.
image.
I was thinking hot pink right in the middle of the.
Yeah,
water.
right in the middle.
Bold,
Make it a little,
italicized, underline.
Ron had asked me some questions. I just want to address them a little bit. I put it in the email.
Oh, yeah.
It's really hard, Ron, and everybody, to contemplate what if regulations would change. They're more likely to change at the federal level. But Massachusetts has its own most states piggyback off the federal. Massachusetts does not. They follow the federal very closely, but it's its own state law, Clean Waters, Act law, whatever, it's not called that, whatever it's called. So I don't think Massachusetts is inclined to change their law and the regulations. And again, the key point here, I meant to mention this earlier, is we are under a consent order from the CLF lawsuit. And so this was the arrangement that was agreed to.
Okay.
The point I want to make is CLF monitors this and monitors progress. And they've actually had lawsuits filed against resorts in Chatham and Harwich as the point source of pollution.
Mhm.
And so they are monitoring this and filing lawsuits if they feel that progress isn't going to be being made. Now I'm not trying to scare people, but that's just the facts, so.
Yeah.
They haven't sued any town.
Yeah, my point in raising it, Rich and Jackie, is just to have a rebuttal ready if somebody at the town
can't hear
meeting
you,
says, hey, why
Ron.
can't we kick the can down the road here? And you've been very
We
clear
can't
in your
hear you,
answers
Ron.
about that. So
No,
thanks.
I heard him, but
Think
I
if-
couldn't.
Wayne,
All
can you
right.
see if the volume of the room is in?
Sorry, can you hear me?
You still can't hear you.
Oh. Sorry, I'll just type something in chat. There's
You're
nothing
okay
critical
now.
here.
Let's leave the door open.
Is this on?
Yes, that's on.
It's good now. Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, can you hear me or not?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good, sorry. No, and thanks again, Rich. My point in raising this is just so you, Jackie, whomever have the, you're ready with a response. If somebody at the town meeting says, hey, why do we have to do this? Why can't we just kick the can down the road here? That's what I was, and you've answered pretty clearly about that, so thank you.
This is the end of the road for the can, I think. We've been kicking it down the road for about 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're done. Same question.
And actually is one of I gotta meet with Hillary. Cause she did a good job on the write-up. I think it's in the book on the regulations. And I just hadn't had a chance to get together with her in the last couple of days. But I wanted to add, our perspective on exactly that issue. What if you don't meet these regulations? What do we think is gonna happen? And the answer is, I think we have to start rolling out in the next 5 to 10 years, this whole IA program. Oh, we don't, each homeowner would have to do it.
And okay, I'll tell a little story. Can I tell a story? So, this year, we have sentry wells all around the landfill, the old landfill. We have sentry wells all around our wells, right, for protection. And we have to test, the state mandates that we test around the landfill, and any home that's not hooked up to public water. And we had five hits of PFAS in private water supplies that were not hooked up to the public water supply. So of all the mandatory area, there were still some people who had refused to let us hook up. And they had to hook up this past year because of that. So it's like, even if you think your water's great now, or you think that you don't need an IA system now or whatever, it doesn't mean that you're not going to need it. It's just hard to imagine, right? That we offered to pay for people to hook up to the water system and they didn't, and they've been drinking PFAS for 7 years.
Did we pay for those people that, or no?
I believe we did. I believe
Even
we
after
did.
They refused.
Yes.
Well, they're in the area, right, the requirement.
They're in
Well-
the very area, but the time.
They never hooked up.
We, the time limit. on that.
Once there's a problem and the PFAS is polluting their well, then we become the responsible party, which is always the case.
Even though they refused to hook up in the area where.
Right, but we remediated it by saying, we have a public water system and
Yeah,
we
they
can
take
just
it.
hook them up.
right.
So we
paid
did.
for all. We paid for all of those hookups.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'm in that area.
Well, my neighbor, the big house,
That awful house.
the big house, they did not hook up to the owner prior didn't hook up, even though we were offering the free hookups. So that house has to pay, you see the water connection
Yeah, I
coming
see
in,
it,
they
I
had
see
to.
it, yeah,
pay
I see
for it.
it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have, so how, you're gonna pass this out as people check in? So, and they're gonna be sitting there.
Mhm.
So is somebody gonna address the meeting and upfront in the, at the town meeting, the upcoming meeting and what this is about?
Perhaps,
Right.
I think we'll say there's an upcoming meeting and then we'll
preempt it.
advertise the info sessions. Probably, but I also anticipate that there may be some people that will be at this town meeting with materials opposing
Mhm,
this.
mhm.
But I mean, saying there's going to be some people that have no clue.
Right. Right. And will, not want to read this anyway because they haven't read anything since 2009, so, but it's a little more important now.
We're gonna have the small group of people possibly, who, with the town water, I remember were saying to me, there's no such thing as carcinogenic.
Right.
They don't exist. This is overreach, government overreach. So I think you can't get past that argument, so you just let people have their experience.
Well, I think you're probably right. You can't get past that argument, but let's go with that premise that it's government overreach. It's government overreach of the federal and state government requiring the town of Eastham to do something. So
Mhm.
it's not like a local choice that we have against this.
We're not overreach.
We're not the overreachers. We're just trying to get along to go along to get along.
Which actually, maybe it would be good if somebody brought that up, because that is the perfect argument.
Mhm.
Whereas with
This is
water,
a verb issue.
Well, and like I said, I think the first words out of my mouth when we put this in front of the select board is like, listen, we don't want to be in the wastewater business. I mean, what do we need this for? I mean, Jackie's trying to retire and go out on a high note and, she's raising people's taxes $1,000.
I'm gonna be on a
Um,
fixed income.
So, we don't need this, but again, it's the right thing to do. And we're trying to save you money. And now it's up to you to make that choice. And so if you want to save money and do the right thing, great. If you don't, that's okay too, because we don't, I don't want to have to run a wastewater plant.
No. But I also really, I very, very strongly think that we do want to leave it all on the field for this, because the truth is, I won't be able to forgive myself if I had decided or convinced the select board to decide not to bring it forward, because really it could be our last chance to get this financing. And I know what it costs the town not to get it for water. And we could have paid for half of this
Yeah,
with the money from water. So, that enough. I know we talk about money in this a lot though, and it is a twofold thing. There is environmental damage is happening and we don't talk about it a lot, and it could be something else other than nitrogen, but I don't know, because we had to close down the shellfishing in Town Cove twice this year because of new bacterias that
weren't there before.
weren't there before. And we have the Division of Marine Fisheries suggesting that maybe Salt Pond gets closed every year for, we do have red tide, and so we do close it
But it's coming early.
for shellfishing, but it's extending that period every year. So we are doing damage to our environment, and the easiest way to fix it, the easiest way to mitigate it is to get rid of, the stormwater from Route 6, that's 16%, I think, on the chart, and 80% is septic systems.
Septic system. Oh. Oh. Does anybody have any other comments, questions?
everybody rests
Concerns.
well on Sunday, put your feet up.
Yeah, and I think that the information on the info sessions should be helpful. Not the information, but having the info sessions.
Yeah.
Is are the three of you, I mean, the two of you and Hillary going to be running the info sessions?
The two of us, Hillary and the consultants for wastewater,
Oh,
the
oh, oh.
EPG
Oh,
consultants.
oh,
Would
okay.
it be helpful to have, an easel beside each of the doors with those dates for info sessions
Maybe.
on them? Cause I know the search committee is gonna have a table. And anybody that has something to say about anything, did you know that you can volunteer and be part of a committee or a board?
Where is the search committee having a table?
Right outside the auditorium. wherever they
In the
put us.
hallway, in the hallway there?
Yeah, the hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a nice wide hallway.
And we
There is,
actually
yeah.
have, for the first couple of hundred people that arrive, we have little gifts.
Mary Ron's got a question.
Ifs.
Yeah, hi, this
Ron-
is just a
Ron.
minor,
Thanks,
Oh.
Rich. Ron?
yeah. Hi, sorry, just a minor point. Jackie, when you were talking about the warrant for the wastewater, I don't know, this is 15, 20 minutes ago. And you were explaining how we only need it once, we're not going back every year. But you also were talking about the 170 million price tag. I just wanted to make sure the warrant's not going to be limited to that number. Just so we can,
No, it is. You
It
need
is.
need to vote a specific authorization and appropriation.
so if so if the cost comes in higher, we'd have to go back at some future year.
Yes,
Okay. I mean, if that's what we have to do, then that's what we do.
yeah.
I'll ask a question sort of associated with that. And we've talked about the fact that you added 10%, that's the 160 to 170. The 10 million. Did you ever consider adding more than that?
No,
No,
No, okay.
that's really the number we're getting from EPG right now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Alrighty. Alrighty, I'm going to just say, I just want to comment, we've talked about the meeting, the town meeting on May 5th, it's coming this Monday. It's scheduled for 5:30, but I am recommending that people get there early. Because of parking, et cetera.
So what time should you want us there early?
Yeah.
What time should we be there?
Well,
Meet up.
I'm planning on being there by around 4:45, but it's up to,
That sounds good.
Now-
Yeah, I just,
we have a weird logistical problem. So we were thinking we would use the screen, the projection screen, because
Oh,
it's
oh.
so huge and we can do motions and show maps and everyone will be able to see it. So when we were testing it, the screen can't be, it's all the way down or all the way up. There's no
in between.
in between. So when we put the tables out, yeah, we might be right up against the screen. I don't want anyone
You're
to.
talking about us and the select board?
Yes. So what we might have to do is, I don't know if any of you seen the auditorium, they have wings off to
Yeah.
the side.
Yeah.
We might have to put
Put
you
the
guys
select
in the
board on one
wings.
side and finance committee on the
Yeah.
other side.
That would be really good.
It might be good, but I really think I like to be near Scott and the attorney.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I that's what I want. So I don't know what's gonna happen.
Is there room to put one small table in the front with the two of you?
See, I
and
think
Scott
there's
and-
probably room to
attorney.
put tables and then we just have to remember that the screens, it's not, you're not gonna, tall people might hit their heads. I don't know. I have to get there. Anyway, I'm just saying,
No,
we
yeah.
have a couple of problems. So you may be in the wings,
Okay.
but it's kind of a cool spot. You can, the entire auditorium will be able to see us if we're in the wings.
Hide under the table.
Before we run this.
It's just.
It reflects that. We're all under the tables.
Well, we could put you down. I don't think we can put you down on the floor. There's no room on the floor.
Sit on the
I'm
floor.
kidding.
You
We
got
can
bean-
all
some
sit on
bean
the floor,
bags.
yeah.
So we got excited thinking, oh, we'll have a screen for the first time and
Yeah, right.
then
You know,
it's the screen,
Oh, the tables, it's
we,
always sort of magic, you get there. and it's all-
yeah, we do. We usually do. It gives me something to do to, Yeah.
Wherever you put us.
Right, it's just gonna be weird.
And the
That might
short
be weird.
people can be in the center in front of the screen and the taller people can be on.
Well, the good news is the screen's not gonna go up and down. That's why I said to
Yeah,
Kayla,
yeah.
maybe we just sit in front of the screen anyway, because it's not moving.
Right.
So once you know where it is in
Yeah, yeah.
relation to your body,
Mhm.
you can manage that hopefully.
But it's gonna
It'll be
projecting
me
on your
doing,
face,
you know,
Yeah.
crazy
that-
stuff.
That's right too.
When I toss my head in disgust, I'll knock the screen over.
All that money they build an orchestra pit,
No, there isn't. an-
No, there's no orchestra
it could
pit.
be right down in there. yeah.
No, there's no orchestra pit.
And it's a massive stage, like.
It is,
they-
it's very
they
nice.
Could have moved the screen back a few feet.
Yeah, that's an issue.
I understand why they didn't, okay? Why they didn't is how often do you have people sitting in front of the screen? Only at town meeting,
Only
right?
at
So
town
only we would think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
They didn't think about that. It's a punch list.
Oh, dear. Okay, so so the town meeting, May 5th, Nauset Regional High School, 5:30. I'm recommending that everybody get there early because of the parking situation. Candidates night, I just want everybody to know that is May 12th at 6 o'clock at the town hall here. For people who want to know, the folks that are on the ballot and get their information. Let me see. The ballot voting, actual ballot voting for this upcoming town meeting is May 20th. Now we have the special town meeting on Monday, June 23rd. That is going to be at 5:30 at the Nauset Regional High School. And the ballot voting for that will be the next day, Tuesday, June 24th. And our next meeting is going to be May 15th here at the town hall at 4 o'clock. It's enough meetings to, and if anybody and we've discussed the info sessions on the back of this booklet here. Anything else that anybody needs to bring up? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Roy,
I'll second it.
Patty, I mean, not Patty, Kate,
She'll get us straight in a couple.
I know. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 0, and I have 7:15.
Mhm.